G'day me dogs, Michael Beveridge here, and today on How to Get Good we're joined by Rohan Browning, the fastest man in Australia who became a household name after he competed at the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. Rohan set his sights on breaking that elusive 10-second barrier at Paris 2024. However, after a campaign plagued by injuries and bowing out in the opening heats, today we will be diving into what makes him tick and the pressures that come with being judged on a 10-second performance. Safe to say, this guy can help me on my journey to getting good, so let's get into it. Now, I did a bunch of reading when it came to sort of like figuring out, because when they're like, Rohan Browning is going to come in for a chat, and I'm like, fuck, I love this dude, right? Like very rarely do you see a combination of like incredible athleticism and really strong brand coming together. And I know those things don't happen accidentally, right? Like in terms of like being pigeoned as, you know, the flying mullet, being like the guy. How have you found going from what was probably like a pretty unsexy growth period of like just sprinting to becoming sort of like a hot commodity in Australia? How's that been for you, that transition?
I don't think I ever got too hot. So, you know, I think the transition was fairly straightforward for the most part. But I think the thing that was really interesting about it for me was that it was literally an overnight thing where like my phone blew up, whilst I was in the Olympic Village in Tokyo.
And that's annoying, right? Because you put in 10 years of effort here. And it's
Totally overwhelming. You know, like I had to shut everything off and just try to, you know, focus on getting the best sleep possible, sort of in this like sort of purgatory period between the Olympic heat and the next day, which has the semi-final, and then, you know, the final, which obviously you're hoping to make.
Has an Aussie ever won a heat at an Olympics?
That's a good question. Maybe.
Because we treat each race individually, like, you know, sure, it's a heat, but it's an Olympic heat.
Yeah.
And there are like the world's best, and you won well. It was what was it, 10:03 in a 7?
10:01 in the heat.
10:01
10:09 in the semi. And I think this is probably where there's a bit of a discord even between like the sort of the media narrative which played out and, you know, my own expectations, which are that it's a championship. It's not about the heat. It's just about progressing, surviving each round and like trying to get through to the final. Once you're in the final, okay, then you're in the game. Like then you have an opportunity to be competitive. So for me, like winning the heat was this great validation that, okay, I've run 10:01, I'm at this level, I'm not far off, I'm so close to sub 10, the Australian record maybe isn't too far off. Mm-hmm. And then you get run out in the semi-final, which is a really, really brutal progression from the semi to the final, because they cut it down from like, I think it's like 24 guys or, you know, whatever it is, like, yeah, it's 4 semis to the top 8 in the world. And like, you know, that is just so cutthroat. And so for me, I felt like I actually didn't even get to the starting line.
Right? It's like not fast enough. Hey man, you weren't fast enough.
Yeah.
See you in 4 years.
Yeah,
and that would suck.
Well, I think that's the thing about the sport is like particularly grueling is that the opportunity to like perform is so limited. You know, we have a world champs every other year. We have an Olympics every 4 years. Mm-hmm. And that is a huge weight, obviously, between Olympics compared to other sports, which for the most part have like 4 majors every year, you know, particularly tennis and golf.
Where does this is like an internal question for me, right? Because as a punter, the least athletic punter in existence, I would go Olympics, World Champs, Commonwealth Games. But because a medal in the Commonwealth Games with the discourse of Australia, would you put that above like World Champs for you in terms of like achieving?
No, I definitely agree with that stratifying it in that way. I think Olympics, World Champs, and Commonwealth Games, because at the end of the day, like the thing that makes this sport so competitive is the fact that it is a truly global sport. Like you can go to any country in the world and this sport is literally like this.
Fellas be running.
Literally, it's so accessible.
Yeah.
And the talent pool is so deep. And so, you know, I think you want those truly global competitions. And then obviously the Commonwealth Games or the Aussie Olympics is like particularly
the Aussie Olympics. I've not heard that.
Yeah, that's what Curtis Marshall and I call it because he just cleans up every year at the Commonwealth Games.
But you've got this is what I sort of enjoy because you got Jamaica. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It's still super rough.
Trinidad, Tobago, Bermuda, like St. Kitts, and like those are sprinting. Like is Botswana in there too?
Oh, that's testing me.
Yeah, I know that there's like the blue flag with the stripes down the middle, but there's world champs. Like Commonwealth Games should not be sneezed at. Like you basically, and Canada and England, right? Like you've got incredible athletes there.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Kenya, Ethiopia, I believe.
Like, how are Kenyans on the sprint?
The one of the top sprinters in the world right now is a Kenyan.
Man, you can't have it all, Kenya. I guess their economy.
They got some real talent.
Give us something, brother. And I respect that. Yeah, so like Commonwealth Games, it feels more accessible than like the Worlds potentially because we don't see enough of the Worlds. But you, entrenched in athletics, you know the power it has, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great opportunity, especially for young athletes, to like blood themselves and get some international exposure early in their career without being put through the ringer at an Olympics where, you know, the Commonwealth Games has a village environment. Like that is a whole world unto itself, right? So it's like, I think often young athletes, they can kind of cut their teeth in that environment where it's a little bit less pressured. You know, it's a great learning opportunity.
Less of a magnifying glass at like a diamond event versus...
For sure. And then they can kind of like carry that learned experience into an Olympic Games.
Yeah, I mean, you can't put LeBron James, having never touched a basketball, on a basketball court and expect him to be good. There's too many like areas of like the shooting dynamics and things like that. Let's take Usain Bolt. He's never sprinted a day in his life. He's 27. We find like Usain Bolt. We put him. Is he running sub 10:05? 10:05?
How old is he?
26.
With no training.
No training. He's just like my man's been a logistics and operations procurement officer in Kingston. Like, but he is.
But he's talent. So like, how much is talent? How much is workload? I mean, I think that there's like this minimum amount of work that you need to actually like realize the
like
talent.
the start, obviously.
Like to just open the door to being able to be successful, right? Or like get a good result. There's definitely training that you need to have no matter what, no matter who you are. Yeah. But obviously Usain Bolt is on such another level to any other athlete in history. Yeah. Maybe he'd buck the trend. I don't know.
How much is the sprint I would do in 100 meter just raw dog on a field versus the sprint I would do after 10 years of training? How different is that in terms of like a human's like biological understanding of run from danger and sprint versus what? Because I was reading this article about like the antithesis of sprinting is working hard. It's about being relaxed.
Yeah.
And obviously when I'm sprinting, I'm doing everything I can to not snap my hammies, but also go as fast as I can. How hard is it to unlearn that trying hard when trying hard is like you have one shot to like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that where
that's a good question? Actually,
is it the 10,000 hours comes in? It's like unlearning effort.
I think, partly. I think there's like a biomechanic motor patterning element. I think there's like a central nervous system development things that you can actually like produce the power necessary to propel yourself forward. There's adaptation in the tissues. It's like so multifactorial. And then obviously at that really elite level, you are trying to be as relaxed as possible because you want everything to be like all your muscles and like tissues to be firing in a particular sequence. You want to be extending your stride as much as is possible within the realm of what is an acceptable mechanic for you personally. And you want to be exerting the maximum amount of power possible in the shortest amount of time with the greatest impulse. I could be saying anything. I could just be dropping words. You have no idea what I'm talking about.
Okay, with that in mind then, right? This is a question I have. You'd be aware of like, and this is probably incorrect, like drag coefficients, I suppose.
You know what? I actually have no idea about that. Like if I shave my head, would
you know
I
what I mean? I'm sitting there and
yeah.
like you're talking about like biomechanical force out, like, and I know that you would be like the AIS would be tracking that stuff. Like you gotta have some drag up there, brother, but it's good for the brand. What do you do?
Yeah, I think I shaved my head once when I was in high school, and it was just.
But you got a good jawline. You're fine.
It was criminal. It was criminally bad.
Yeah, because like I suppose if it was a thing, everyone would do it.
Right. Yeah.
Surely.
I mean, I think I actually have no idea about drag. Honestly, something I've never looked at. I'm probably like willfully blind to it.
Yeah. Do you think that it's your coach's responsibility to sort of like, if they came to you and like, one blade, brother, and we're lubing it up too, like we're gonna slick you down, or like, because we know we all remember Al Cathy. Yeah. We all remember Al Cathy. And I'm like, oh, she clearly was fanging it in that with the hair slicked back, like, or with the suit on over her head. Was it banned to have caps on, I suppose?
Not to my knowledge.
Because we know swimmers do it. And water is just thin air, thick air.
Yeah, it could be.
Water is simply thick air. Well, let's switch it now. I was reading a really interesting, because how to get good being the focus of us and, fastest bloke in Australia, like that's, how can I quantify this into something that's helpful to an average person? I was reading about the 10 segments of a 100 meter sprint. Mm-hmm. And to get a PB, you need to be 100% on each one of those 10 segments. Walk me through which segments are the most important. Do you just break it down by 10 meters? Is there like one that's more important than the other. In my head, the finish and the start are like the most important. But you would be like, when I watched Usain run, obviously he didn't have a strong start. Then he would come back. Is like, how do you focus this? Talk me through this segment thing.
So, I mean, I would probably break it up into the sort of the first like 30 to 40 meters of the race. The next, so the first 30, the next 40, and then the last 30. Okay, we're at 100 meters. Okay.
I didn't do math, brother. Go with me.
The first 30, it's all about overcoming inertia. That's the acceleration part of the race. I think the most critical part of the race, because that's where you are going to sort of like build up towards your maximum velocity, which is the most important part of the race. Probably the biggest indicator of, how you'll perform. That's the biggest chunk through that middle section. But the acceleration is all about setting that up so that you can hit your absolute top end speed or your maximum velocity. And then the idea is that in the last 30 meters, you decelerate the least amount possible. So, you see some guys, like their technical model is they're like 60-meter specialists. They burn too hot at the start. They hit the top speed at 60 and then they burn out in the last 40 meters. They're probably not going to be as successful against someone like, for example, Noah Lyles, Olympic champion, who traditionally has been like a slower starter, builds into just a really world-class top-end speed and then closes so hard. So the idea is you want to like improve and like lift all those elements of the race individually, but there's always going to be a bit of a tug of war between, like how much sort of like energy goes into the start versus the end. And sort of like to that point,
do you
there's
have
so
like
much
a finite
strategy.
Fuel tank? You know it. You know absolutely that this fuel tank burns out at 96 meters.
Not really. It's not so much. I don't think that would like manifest or present so much as like a lack of energy, as it would just that is like maybe it's physics. I don't know. Like you're just kind of like decelerating. Like if you had a laser on it, you probably wouldn't feel like you are. But if they had like a Larvega laser, velocity laser on it, it would show that you are starting to, that curve is starting to go down. Like it smooths off at the top and then it starts to go down a little bit towards the end.
Which is your best segment? Start, middle, or finish?
For me, traditionally, it's been the middle of the race. Like I've had some races where I've run really good top end speeds, like hit high velocities. And I know that at training, I've hit some really good velocities because we track all that with at the New South Wales Institute of Sport.
And that's 12 meters a second type spec?
Yeah, like that's like really, really world class. I've hit that, I think, a couple of times. And when you're running 12 meters a second, like if you have the capacity, the physical capacity to hit that, you should be able to run like 9.8. Obviously, I haven't. My best is 10.01. I ran a wind assisted 9.96. I've run a bunch of 10.0s. I'm keeping the wind assisted,
brother. I'm keeping it.
Yeah. Because
remember, air is just thin water.
Yeah.
Many people are saying.
Yeah, and wind doesn't exist.
How does that feel? You see that, right? Because you don't know.
Yeah.
Or do you know before you start that it's a wind assisted and it won't be counted?
No, you don't know.
That would stink, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
sucks.
Because I mean, you. I'm not saying obviously Olympic gold is that's the number one, but breaking 10 for like, it's a weird one. Do we say a white dude? You know what I mean? Like there is different, like there's different biological things, I suppose.
I mean, I think for me, that is so peripheral to what like motivates me in the sport, right? Which is that you want to compete against the best guys in the world, like whoever they are.
Yeah.
Whoever presents on the day, like whoever turns up. And so, I try to steer away from that kind of commentary because I just feel like...
And it's also insane and very loaded, but like just...
Yeah, and it's also super solipsistic, right? It's like, oh man, like you can just kind of like cut a cake any way to make you look better.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a brutal sport. That's why you do it. It's super competitive. That's what motivates me in it. Yeah.
And also, just like breaking 10, there are certain like breaking any sort of like key barrier feels good. It just would be like deadlifting over 100. You'd be like, cool, I've hit 3 figures now, like earning over 100 grand. Like there's no, but once you hit that, you can just be like, that's nice. And I assume for you, seeing that, Illawarra?
Yeah.
Yeah, seeing that in Illawarra and sort of like, what was that period between hitting it, seeing the 9, and you, like, because obviously it's a slap in the face. Do you know you ran 9? But you're like, yes, everything went right?
You definitely have a feeling like that was, you feel like you were moving.
It's that much difference, right? So how do you...
Yeah. I think there's also like, if you run a personal best, there's always this like immediate fatigue that kind of hits you. Or you'll take more time as you like slow up as you run through the line. Because
Is there a smile on your face?
Yeah, there might have been.
Yeah.
There might have been, like, that it's quick. You know that you perform well. And in that particular race, there wasn't like a live clock. I don't know if it was working on it. So they read it out over the PA. So there was a bit of a delay, and then they read it out like 9. And that moment you hear that first syllable, like 9
Fuck,
point
man.
cheering.
Bro.
And then they say, and unfortunately it's illegal because of the tailwind or whatever. It's like, okay,
Lead
sobering.
with that part, right? It's like, now the tailwind leaves this time, but it was not. That's much better. Yeah, wow, man.
Yeah.
And so what were the feelings like? And I might be making a mountain out of it. You might be like, nothing, bro. Moved on to the next race. Like, I'm such an elite. Like, would you say that the 100-meter sprint is probably the highest pressure sporting event or one of the most high pressure sporting events going?
Yeah, I would say yes, on the basis that it is you get the fewest opportunity, like the longest wait between Olympic Games, which is obviously the peak.
Yep.
And it's the shortest event with the least possible opportunities to like redeem an error.
Yeah.
Yeah. And probably the most cutthroat progression round to round. So yeah, I would say yeah.
And probably the biggest magnifying glass on it.
Yeah.
From a media perspective.
Massive.
Like, unless you're like a whimsically casual Turkish like target shooter, like no one else is really sort of like getting like. I mean, hey Hammer, who won the long jump?
I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know, right? But we know who ran who won the 100. So I feel,
and it's just not demanding of anyone's like attention span, which is great for this TikTok generation.
Yeah.
Also, so you just like you sit there, you watch it, it's dope, and yeah.
and the foreplay, the edging is great on it. Like just the little leg kicks they do on the start.
Yeah.
Little dangly. Here's another question. We are like people who grew up in a hyper screen era, and we remember Swing Low, right?
Yeah. Street Chariot.
No, Matthew Shervington.
Oh.
Right. I remember growing up watching, and they would call, Roy and HG would call Shervo Swing Low.
Right, yeah.
Because the shot of you, slow-mo, everything's on display, right? Is there a level of like like self-awareness that you've got to get over? Because, someone in a marathon, they're wearing baggy clothes, they're just like running, it's not that stressful. In water, sort of like you're underwater.
Yeah.
Like, is there a level of like self-awareness of how you look, or are you so laser focused that it doesn't even click at all?
Yeah, there is a little bit, I think.
It would be weird if you said there wasn't.
Yeah, because you are in like a bodysuit, which is incredibly tight, lycra, effectively.
Who decides that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just like mutual. Everyone like mutually agrees that that's just like what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because remember, like, they decided that, like, remember the women's opals played in, like, a bodysuit for ages? And everyone was like, why are they doing that? Yeah. Why aren't they wearing basketball singlets and shorts?
It's just part of the culture of the sport, I guess. I love that 80s era where you had these, like, absolutely ripped, like, these jacked sprinters in little, like, stringlets. Like
Ben Johnson, like,
like
out the gills. Carl Lewis, like 84 LA, like that spec. That was sick.
Yeah, and I think, you could wear split shorts, go full Chariots of Fire, but I don't know.
The IOC won't allow it. Here's a question that I think a lot of people think about. Right? Would you say that training and working in the pressure and the magnifying glass is hard?
It can be hard sometimes, yeah. I think...
it's surely, like...
Yeah.
It's hard.
Like, for sure, there are particular sessions that are really hard. Like, if you're pushing lactic threshold stuff, even just, like, top-end speed stuff is hard in terms of how fatiguing it is for your central nervous system. And that's a fatigue that can last a week, 10 days.
Well, they were saying that... I was reading about your coaches wanting to, like, pull your local meets down because at the end of the season, you're sort of like, I'm strained.
Yeah, for us, it's a really long season. So it's like you sort of need to like ebb and flow in terms of the shape that you're in. And, like you need a peak. For us, we need to peak twice a year. The idea is that you push that to later in the year. So you only have to peak for the major championship, which is in, August, September, as opposed to peaking through our domestic season in our summer and then also for the European summer.
Have you ever thought about being a winger?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you are the fastest dude. Like, and you grew up in. Are you Sydney boy?
Yeah, I am.
You know how to handle a football, right? You can chuck a steed and you can hold a Gilbert. You vaguely know how to run with the ball. Like, maybe is it more an indictment on how difficult it is to be a rugby league player or a union player versus like being fast, being like a blanket skill that makes you succeed there?
I mean, honestly, I love the sport. I have no desire to get CTE. So I'm happy with where I'm
And I
at.
think actually in this conversation we can tell you haven't had CT. So it's felt like.
But I started in
Has there been any
playing heaps of sport.
messages?
No.
Like has
No,
like
not really.
Des Hasler been like, brother, come
No,
on,
no.
like
No, nothing like
did you
that.
play college, like at high school?
Yeah, I did. And to be honest, it was probably like missing out on some school representative level footy that made me jaded enough to want to throw myself in a track and field in a more serious capacity.
Now we all sort of grew up doing little athletics in Australia. Was there something else that you thought you might have been good at that, and you sort of got forced into sprinting? Like, were you potentially a good high jumper, a long jumper? We know that at an early age, you're generally just good at everything.
No, I did little A's for 1 year. I think I went to like 1 or 2 meets, and I have this really scarring memory of doing a hurdles race and tripping over, and I don't think I ever went back. So
Fair.
I honestly was never into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, never into it at all.
Huh.
And to be honest, for me, like I wouldn't even necessarily want to do the sport and do a different event because like I just love this event. I do love the 400 though. I think the 400 is brilliant.
That's
I think
a hard
that is
event, brother.
Yeah, that is a hard event. Like because I think what I like about it is it's a bit more strategic. There's this tactical element to it. That it's not just pure like power over the shortest amount of period of time and then like you either
What's the record there? Like 44, 45? Michael Johnson?
the world record.
Yeah. Who's the good guy? Michael Johnson?
Yeah, Michael Johnson won.
Whole bunch of golds. He was the guy.
Yeah, he only ever won golds.
Yeah.
But the world record is Van Nico. Way Van Nico from South Africa broke it in, I think it's like 43:03. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
From Rio.
One of the most
From lane 8, running blind in lane 8. It was awesome. One of the best moments in track and field.
What does Lane do in terms of like making a real impact of your performance?
I mean, usually the idea is with the seeding through the rounds, the higher ranked seeds like get the middle lanes. I think they've just adjusted it over the past year. But, you know, I think in the 400, if you're in lane 8, it's like you don't actually have any visual. Like, so Van Dijk in that race, he led the whole way. So at no point did he necessarily like see anybody.
Yeah, right.
So you don't have anything to like
Would there have been
judge your pace off.
an element where it was like, fuck, have I missed the false start? Like,
Yeah, I could imagine.
because there's got to be a feeling as
I could imagine.
Yeah.
Because you also get this horrible situation sometimes where like that will happen and guys will just
burn your energy. Like,
well, they'll run.
Yeah.
Because they don't know, and then there've been like horrible cases where people have run halfway around the track, and then they finally realised they've been called back, and it's like
lactic's
they're
already building
cooked,
up. They're done. Oh, that's. I mean, surely there's got. Yeah. In terms of, I suppose, figuring out you were an elite level, and then the move into training like an elite athlete. How much willingness was there for you? Were you ready to go the whole way, or did you have to be sort of like? Did your arm have to get twisted to be like, brother, you could be really special. I need you to get up at 5.
No, I was always really self-motivated. Like, it just felt like a natural progression because I think I benefited from really great mentorship. Like, I had my coach, Andrew Murphy, who was working at the school. At the time, he was working at the school that I was at. And, you know, he had been to 3 Olympics. And I just, like, really, like, at the time, idolized him. And he was such a great coach, such a great mentor. I think he sort of has, for me, enough of a laissez-faire approach that it was, like, some coaches a bit more autocratic. Murph's not like that at all. And I was just always really self-motivated. So I think when you sort of get to this level, you almost find that the sport chooses you because opportunities open up and you realize like you develop this sort of like self-belief that you can perform at this level. And that's exciting when you're coming into the end of high school and, you know, especially in this transitory period of your life, you're trying to figure out like, what I want to be, what I want to do, it like just gives you this structure. So for me, I know that I do really well under conditions of structure and routine. So, you know, it just was a good match.
Financially, because I remember I was listening to, I think it was Dylan Friends or one of those podcasts, and they were talking about, I think it was Magnuson, maybe was talking about the contracts that you get on. You don't have to disclose numbers because I know you're still involved. But obviously the media and the brand deals probably make up a decent chunk of your output. Are there decisions you make in terms of your public behavior that could like help improve, like that are guided by that? Like, do you decide to be a little more out there? Like,
No, you know, I actually haven't ever been particularly strategic about that. I think I've just tried to be like genuine, authentic. I think like in Tokyo when I interviewed, I was just like really sort of genuine, and I just never changed it, I guess. Like, you know, I've never felt like I had to sort of play a role or something.
Yeah.
Or convey a certain image necessarily. Maybe I should.
Well, I think, and I was about to say, you're still in your athletic peak. When does athletic peak burn out for sprinters?
I think like this is a bit of an older man's event, late 20s through to early 30s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for sure. Like I think I'm probably entering my peak years now. I had a really poor Olympics. I was sort of like hampered by injury all year.
Talk us through that injury.
Yeah, so it was just an ongoing knee injury that I've had throughout my career. I think it's been this iterative process of understanding exactly what flares it, what load I can manage, what exercises are good for it, at what time. And like, I think that now I've landed in this position where I have a lot of faith in our overall strategy. Like, I think we have really great strategy. And I was sort of thinking before about, okay, like coming on the How to Get Good podcast, like what's the key to getting good in this sport? And I think for me, there's probably like 3 things I could distill it down to. The first one's strategy. The second thing is grit. And the third thing is like an adaptability. You know, I think like at the micro level, you have to be really, really able to adapt to things like day to day at training. How do you feel? You know, we're in the business of trying to perform at the highest quality possible, as frequently as possible.
Adaptable, but with still a North Star that's very clear, very defined.
Absolutely. And so like for us, you know, if I need to train like max velocity and I'm not recovered to do it, then I might as well be resting. So I can just do that as soon as possible.
I'll let you get through the other 2.
Yeah, the other 2, I think, strategy. So, you know, I think for me this year, I had a really poor season in the most important year, you know, in the past 4 years, the Olympic year. And it's like, okay, how do I bounce back from that? Like, do I need radical change? Do I need iterative change, like incremental change? And I think a lot of people bias towards the former when actually the answer lies probably somewhere closer to the latter, you know, that incremental change. It's like...
We'll jump back into sort of like the mental aspect of tough year in, again, 4 years between premium events.
Yeah.
And you only get one shot in that premium year. And you've had, by your own words, a poor showing, obviously with something outside of your control being a degenerative or just like a long-term knee issue.
Yeah, just like a long-term issue that is sound, like it's a healthy knee, but it just is a bit prone to getting flat up by certain exases and things at certain times,
Altitude,
certain loads.
is it sort of like...
No.
It's
it all just responds to load. It's like, you know, how quickly do I accelerate into like top end speed when...
There's a psychopathic amount of like newtons being pushed down on your like patella and like all of those things.
Yeah, the forces are so high, right? So it's like, I know that for me now, like where I am in this, I need to have a 6 to 8 week period of like just putting a lid on it. Because actually I know that my nervous system is capable of running a lot quicker than maybe what my tissues are capable of handling at this point.
Annoying.
So let's put it, too fast for my own good.
Bro, like your brain's just like, brother, we can fucking send it. And your body's like, hold on.
You know, literally it's like, okay, I just need to put a lid on this and just build this really incrementally so that, okay, later in the year, early next year, I can actually perform at this level.
You would be regarded broadly as, and I think the third one was grit. I think
grit, yeah, definitely.
And there's no argument that like to get to where you are and having started to a level where that you didn't want to go to little athletics. You know what I mean? If someone was like, he's been going to little athletics from 4 to 8, then he was at AIS by 8 to 4. Like,
yeah,
you forged your own path, really.
Yeah, I think that where grit is like really crucial to this sport is that it's fundamentally self-guided. Like, there's no pathway. You don't go into a club structure where you get put on a massive salary and you're like, everything's done for you. It's like you have to figure it out yourself. And if you have great mentorship and coaches and things, then you're lucky. Like that's a great situation, it's an ideal situation.
Forgive me for not knowing this. Did you go to college in the US?
No, I went to uni in Sydney.
As in on an athletic scholarship, right? Was that opportunity ever available?
To go to the US?
Yeah. And to run under like, a Big Ten system.
Well, I sort of investigated. I investigated for a bit and then I sort of got admitted into the course I wanted to do it like in Sydney.
Yeah.
And I just decided to stay there and like stay with my current coach, stay close to family and...
Because like the training at UCLA or the training at like Georgia Tech and things like that would be like, I've seen the systems. It's demented. We're equal to that at home in sort of like...
No, I think like because our talent pool is much smaller, right? It's like you have to actually nurture talent better because I think in the US there is definitely just like broadly, there is probably an understanding that the talent pool is so good. So you can kind of like break a lot of athletes en route to finding the really robust athlete who's going to come out, emerge from that system really world class.
Yeah,
Whereas...
Right.
I think in Australia, if you have someone who shows world-class potential, like a gout, you have to nurture them because we can't afford to just like burn athletes like they do in other countries. But just to that point about grit, I think the other key there is like patience because, if you have a good strategy, and at the end of the day, I think like strategy always wins in the long term. If you have a good strategy that you believe in, you have good evidence for that, then it's like, how can you see that through over 10 years? And like, that's when you get to your career peak.
But I mean, you're talking about this thinking when you're like, what, 18, 19, 20, 21?
Like, no.
That requires like a huge amount of maturity.
Yeah, I mean, not exactly. Like, when I look back to then, you know, when I was 16, I remember I had this huge breakthrough year where I had this like really unprecedented like improvement where I ran 1090 in September. That was the first time I'd run sub 12 seconds. I was 16, played rugby. Like, I probably just hit a growth spurt, got strong, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just went like 10.9, wind assisted 10.39, wind legal 10.40, and then I ran a wind assisted 10.18. That was all between September and December. And like, I had this, like, it was such an absurd progression.
Into athletic peak in the next like 3 years.
But that was the thing, right? Like, I came off the back of that and thought, wow, like, I must be really talented. I'm probably going to run sub 10 in the next year or two. And I look back now and I think, wanker. Because, you know, I just had
no one looks at themselves when they're 17 and goes, that's a cool dude.
I just had no perspective. It's like, that's not how that curve of diminishing returns works. It flattens out at the top. It takes exponentially more effort or creativity.
Fundamental shifts have to happen to give you that next curve.
100% in order to, you know, improve at that rate.
I remember someone told me in like 2003 Tour de France, the actual winner came 23rd when you take out like steroids and performance enhancing, like PEDs.
Right.
And I'm sort of like, how much better can they make you perform, right? Like, I don't truly understand what the difference is because being more muscular doesn't help. I know that there's like a blood oxygen thing that could potentially help. It was like when Warney took those diuretics. You know what I mean? I'm like, how the fuck does that help Warney turn a fucking kookaburra? Hypothetically, if we were to say an elite sprinter who could run a 10, hypothetically, maybe their best time's a 10:01. Couldn't imagine who that would be. If they were on performance-enhancing drugs, how fast could they go? Like, how much of a difference does it make?
What's the difference? I have no idea. I guess it would depend.
That's the correct answer. You don't know. But like, hypothetically, like, does it make that? It must make that big of a difference if people are willing to make that jump.
Man, I don't know. I think, but like, my fundamental understanding about how, you know, drugs have traditionally been used in, like, illicit drugs have been used in sport, is that it, you know, basically allows people to like recover much more quickly so that they can train at like a superhuman level.
Or that
the
frequency burnout isn't as much, so that like, what was the schedule of the Olympics? Heat, then how long till the next race?
The next day. So like, I think it was.
And you're used to that.
Well, actually, I think we were in the heats in the morning, and then the semi-final would have been, you know, next afternoon, and then an hour after that, or so, like 90 minutes or so, would be the final.
An hour.
Yeah, but that's okay. Like, because
you're fine with that. That's like a known.
Yeah, I think it might have been more. It might have been like 90 minutes or so. I think that's all right. Like, I think especially for guys at that level.
Yeah, right.
What would really be hard, I think, is like having to back up the 200, and then, you know, like, guys, there are some guys, they back up the 1, the 2, the relay. Like, it's just across a week. Like, that would just, like, I've never been able to tolerate that kind of load. And I think as I've gotten older, maybe I've been like a bit of a later bloomer. Which in the sport, which I think is interesting, is like, I've just had to build that load incrementally. There's this really interesting book called The Sports Gene, by David Epstein, I believe. Not Jeffrey Epstein.
Brother of.
And like,
not funny.
There's this really interesting point that gets made about how, like, you know, in the arts, there's this like fundamental understanding that artists blossom later in life. Or I could be attributing this to the wrong book. This might have been Malcolm Gladwell. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, there's this concept of like patronage in the arts, right? It's like somebody will like sponsor an artist so that they can develop over a lifetime, understanding they produce their best work later.
Yeah.
Sports biases the other way. Like, if you're not an incredible talent by the time you're 18, 19, 20, you get spat out because the system probably doesn't provide for you. So, you know, I think that in Australia, where our talent pool is like smaller than a US or, you know, a Russia or a China, for example, it's important to like nurture that talent, because a lot of people come good later on. Like Patrick Johnson, for example, I don't believe started the sport until he was about 26. I'm 26 right now. He broke the national record at like 31. So
what was he doing?
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like, that's my logic about you sound like could there be like another Usain Bolt sitting out there in Latvia just like potato farming and just, you know, be an absolute hoon?
Like, yeah, honestly, potentially, yeah.
Joel
I mean,
Embiid. like there's so many like basketball players in like Central
100%.
Africa.
I think there's a lot of talent that goes unrealized just because, like,
privilege and like lack to resource.
Yeah, 100% access to facilities, you know. But I just think that's an interesting point about like patronage versus like young prodigal talent, you know.
Sports and music, I think,
prodigious talent rather.
Because it's like you almost need like that hot white burn of like youth to like fuel something.
Yeah.
Like, no good musicians happen after 30. You know what I mean? All their best albums are in their early 20s.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's probably true of sport too, to the point that like, okay, at some point you're going to physically decline. So but I think there's probably lots of people who can actually like, they're not going to be super, super world class 18, 19, 20, 21.
No.
But maybe 27 to 31, 32 they are. And, you know, eventually they're going to hit that physical decline, but the peak's going to come later.
With great work has to come great, I'm not going to say partying, but like great relaxation time. How do you deal with the pressure of sort of like being perceived as the most elite sprinter in Australia whilst also being a young guy?
Well, I think I always rebelled against the idea of being like having my identity tied too closely to the sport. I think
it's important.
Well, I just think I saw a lot of people who came through the sport and like they get so resentful about it if it wasn't going their way.
What do your mates call you, nickname wise?
Roy.
Roy! Right, so what does Roy do to relax? Because I'm sure no one in the sprint world calls you Roy.
No.
Right?
It's just a select group of mates.
And I think there's something really special in that, right? Having sort of like this separation of character, and then Roy, what does Roy do to relax? With his friends, right?
Oh, with my mates? I mean, honestly, I've been reading a lot lately. Solo. With the boys. Sorry, if I'm with the boys.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, like
are we schooners on a Sunday? Are we runs up and
like honestly sometimes, yeah. Like North Bondi RSL on a Saturday afternoon.
Gorgeous,
or
brother.
you know,
gorgeous.
Or the old Fits on a Sunday afternoon when they got the live jazz.
My boy's spitting.
Unbeatable.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it depends. I think there are ways to find some balance. And also like you put in a lot of work, you burn a lot of calories, so you can have a glass of wine at PMV. You can go to, you know, whatever.
PMV, hitting all the favourites, brother. Is there a reaction issue for being a sprinter that if you do not have that immediate reaction time, there's just no point pursuing it?
Oh, like honestly, I think even if you look at the data of the Olympic final, there will be reaction times anywhere between 0.1 of a second and like 0.2, like 8, more or less. So like, you know, some guys and sometimes those guys who react a little slower, like are just running better. So there probably is a window. I would say that there probably is a window that is like you would need to fall into, because if you don't, you probably just all slow twitch muscle fibers and you'll probably never be good.
Sub.
Yeah.
If you had to pick another event at the Olympics that wasn't running based, what would it be? That you feel maybe, and can be Winter Olympics as well. Oh, bobsled pusher? Jana Pittman, brother?
Lots of people go down that route. That's not going to be my path. I think once I'm done with the sport, I'll hang it up and never look back, do something else. But I think if I could pick anything not running, probably like in my current format, or I'm someone else.
No,
can I pick basketball and I'm
bro? You know,
6'6"?
Unfortunately not, brother. We're regular sized white kings right now, man. You just got to like take with what you got. But it's your athletic prowess, right?
Yeah, okay. Man, maybe weightlifting. I think that's probably the closest.
Because your legs would be pretty strong, I assume. What can you leg press?
We do like, we do this thing. It's like a super maximal leg press. This is kind of cheating because you don't push it, you just resist it, and it's like you will put that up 600 kilos single leg, and the idea is you.
What the fuck? Single leg?
Yeah, but the idea is you are resisting gravity for as long as possible. So like it's crushing you, but you're trying to like generate this like super maximal
600 kilo one leg.
Yeah, but you're not pushing it back up. But I would regularly once a week. I do this thing. It's like it's a knee. It started as a knee rehab. Now it's just like a staple of my gym program once a week. It's like 3 sets of 10 second. It's like a 10-second contraction. So it's like 5 down, 5 up, and it's single leg. And I would regularly put like 340.
That's fucking demented, bro. Like you.
But we're not moving. Like, to be honest, I'm moving it like the
That's
plate
harder.
is moving this
That's
far.
harder.
No, it's easier for sure. It's easier.
Holding as it comes down, like that's just like
Yeah.
the most, like a PT would just be overcome with joy watching a rep like that. They'd be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
good
Because there's more
hold.
force. Like you can withstand a lot more force eccentrically than you can concentric. You know, obviously, the eccentric part being the down, the push being the concentric.
So you
part.
could double leg 600 pretty easy.
I don't know. You know, I actually haven't. I don't think I've ever done that. I don't think
fact that
I've
you're
double
like-
leg press
the
in like
fact that you're
10 years.
Maybe like and not like no, the favorite, like that's demented. Is like if you had to give someone, just me actually, let's think of
Yeah.
me. I would love to get faster,
Yeah.
right? I would love to. Someone has this fun fact that like you get to an age where it's the last time you'll ever sprint at full speed ever again.
Yeah.
And the more you do that, the more you like avoid that happening.
Yeah.
What would be like 3 easy tips that I could do that you do in terms of training that like could improve my speed?
Yeah, it's a good question. And supposedly, like when you sprint
Just
or
watch
you
my
get
form really quickly too. I'll just do a really quick one. Right, that's
Yeah.
quick little start. Good little knee lift as well.
good knee lift, bit of plantar flexion in the ankle, which I don't love, but the reaction
The fuck's
not
that?
bad.
What's my plantar flexion?
Like pointing your foot down as opposed to dorsey, which is like up, pointing the toe up.
Haha.
It's like you pre-tense. It's like when you dorsiflex, you like pre-tense the Achilles tendon, and it's like more reactive off the ground. But I would say the biggest thing for the layman to get
Yeah, for the layman. Let's go layman. I was like, you lost me at plantar.
to get quicker, like because as you to your point, people lose it.
Yeah.
And like that is like really key athleticism. Nobody's doing this. Like there's no gyms out there that I think are like teaching like true athleticism.
Yeah.
And I think the answer is probably like a plyometric kind of activity movement. You know, anything that is like jumping, running fast, like just dosing it minimally, but like doing it frequently.
like baby parkour to a degree.
Yeah. If that's your if
Calisthenic,
that's
like-
more your tempo,
I don't know,
parkour,
it's not.
go
It's
for
not.
it. But I mean, like honestly, I don't think it really matters what format that is, but like maybe some box jumps, maybe jumping off the box and then like reactively off the ground. You got to build this up. Like some of this stuff's more advanced than
Like
than
as in,
other
so you
things.
drop and then you spring when you land. So like,
Yeah.
like that sort of.
Yeah, but you jump a little higher than that.
I got a 2 inch
Ideally.
vertical. I got a 2 inch vertical, brother.
Yeah, I like anything that is sort of reactive like that. I think plyometrics, anything that's like jumping, hopping, like that's going to build stiffness around in the tissues. It's going to, which you want. Like you don't want massive like necessarily like joint laxity. You know, like I don't think it's possible for me. I don't want to jinx it to roll my ankle. Like I've hit a ditch before and my ankles
Give me
just
that
bounce.
ankle.
My ankles just bounce back. Because the idea is like for us, we want maximal stiffness through the tendons. We want stiffness through the joints to a point.
When did you start shaving your legs? And do you have to keep doing that?
I think I've shaved my. Oh god, this is kind of shameful. I think I've shaved my legs every week since I was like 16.
Let me
To
tell
the
you-
point now, I don't really know what they would look like with hair. And like, I think one time I grew
Well,
out
hold
a
on a
bit,
second. Hold on a second.
and I started getting static from my jeans.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're shaving legs here,
Yeah.
but not the head.
Yeah. No, but
know something.
that isn't motivated by aerodynamics. That's motivated more by like,
Comfort?
like comfort, like massage, tape. So if you could put tape on,
Oh, right.
that sort of thing. Yeah.
Bro.
Friction. You want to be removing friction.
It's just non-athletic me. It's just like, it couldn't be. Oh, yes, of course, tape, of course. Hey, what's your VO2 max? Do you know?
I have no idea. Never tested it.
Isn't that interesting that you don't give a shit about it yet? I spent 15 weeks trying to improve mine for some reason.
But again, like my housemates come home, they're like, okay, I ran 15K today at this pace. I have no idea. Like I have no yardstick for what is a good mile.
What's the longest run that you do?
I think a good mile is like 4 minutes. That's all I know. That's my
Yeah,
yardstick.
that was like Chariots of Fire.
Yeah,
wasn't
that's like
it?
world class. Yeah.
What's the longest runs that you would do?
We would
You
do.
joining run clubs? You rocking up? You know?
No, I'm not doing that. We do like we might do like 350 meter reps. The longest we would do in the off season.
Oh, me too, bro.
Yeah, we do like 40. We were doing these 40-second runs for a while. So you would do like.
At like a 400 level or like just...
They were relative. They weren't flat stick, but they were hard because you do maybe like 3 or 4 of them, and we'd have long rests. So that was the other thing I think I'd say. Like if you're doing plyometric activities, if you're a layman,
yeah.
you know, and even at the elite level, you need to respect like the output. Like you need to respect the exercise. So you need to take sufficient rest. You know, if you're just trying to get your heart rate up, that's a different story. But if you actually want to get some of this like adaptation in the tissue, you need to, and through the central nervous system, be able to like lift heavier or, put out more power. Like you actually need to have good rest.
Producer Hamos just put this through. Thoughts on enhanced games? Would you take the paycheck?
No, it's not for me.
3 million.
No, it's just like
it's in Dubai, so there's no tax on it either, which is basically $5.4 million.
Yeah, like honestly, principally, like it's just not my thing. Like, I love the sport for what it is in its format that it currently exists in. And once I'm done with it, I'll walk away. Like I'm not looking to do any side shows. I'm not looking to.
We'll reassess. Yeah, it was just an interesting one seeing like the kerfuffle in the media about James Magnussen speaking about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would have seen that. Where other athletes just like, shut the fuck up, dude. Like, stop putting us like.
I mean, I really have no idea. I didn't really hear many athletes discussing it, except out of like just like kind of curious way. Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if it has traction. I don't really know anything about it.
It's also dangerous, right? Like steroids have been they've been proven to like massively like.
I would imagine so. I don't know. I mean, I think.
Like, what's the liability on the person putting the money there? Like, the dude's heart explodes because he's juiced so far to the gills.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being a legal problem.
Like
for sure.
Someone in Bulgaria just like deadlifting like 14,000 kilo and their heart rupturing. It's just like everyone's like.
Yeah, it'd be.
Cool.
Yeah, it would be fairly tragic. I think. Yeah, I mean, like honestly, I don't know enough about it. It's not for me.
That's fair.
As a matter of principle.
And I'm just trying to think. Did you ever do swimming?
No, I swim like a brick.
Not well. Thoughts and prayers.
Not well. The closest you'd find me to swimming would be doing like. I've done a little bit of swimming out the back, like at the beach, like a bit of ocean swimming, just in summer, like just around the back and then swim back in.
A headrest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it good for your headrest? Like in terms of like just.
Yeah, it's just nice.
Silence?
It's nice, and like maybe I'd swim a few laps, but I'm talking like I'd swim 5 laps of a 25-meter pool. Like I'm not doing.
That's good innings, bro.
I'm not doing like a K of swimming or something.
You're doing 5 laps of a 25-meter pool. Good on you, brother.
Yeah, I literally couldn't swim more than that. I think I'd struggle.
And what was the? I assume you didn't do it, and because of your last Olympics, it was maybe you were a little bit bummed. What was like the party culture like inside the Olympic Village?
Well,
because we hear about the cardboard beds, and that just seems foreign to us as like you're grown adults. What's going on here?
I think it was different this year because the athletes who were competing the first week, once they finished, they were like moved out of the village because there were limited beds and they needed to bring people in to fill those rooms.
Uh-huh.
So they sort of like expedited that exit, so there weren't people partying in the village while competition was still going on.
Yeah, probably makes sense.
Tokyo was different as well because like it was COVID, so it was a bit more stringent than what I've heard has happened in the past. But yeah, like I think people. I think people kicked on a bit like after the closing ceremony in the village, but I mean. Yeah, I didn't really hear anything too outrageous. Beyond what was reported in the press.
Did you meet Rhaegar?
Yeah. I'd actually met Rachel before the Olympics at an event.
What event?
It was a photo shoot for the Iconic.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like an athletic event. How are you guys crossing over?
Yeah. She was lovely.
There we go. Rohan Browning joins us on How to Get Good. Or he's joined us. Mate, thank you very much for coming in. It's been incredible hearing you talk. You are... I think as quick mentally as you are physically. So we've loved having you. Hopefully punters at home have gotten something in terms of mindset. I think that seems to be like one of the most impressive things about you.
I appreciate it. It's been a real joy. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Good on you, brother. See you guys soon.